This lecture builds on the previous one about ontology, epistemology, and theory, and seeks to explain the features of good political science theories. So remember the definition of a political science theory from a previous lecture. This is a body of statements that synthesize knowledge of and explain phenomena that are related to politics. And so we're going to take this definition and delve into questions about what good theories are and what are the foundations that they're built on. So we're going to identify 6 features of political science theories. Okay? So first feature, political science theories are non-normative. They address questions about how the world is, not how it should be. Thinking about the example of a social revolution, we're not trying to understand whether a revolution was just or unjust, or whether it was merited or not. Those would be questions for political philosophy. They're important questions, but they're not questions that we can answer using empirics about the world. And so these are concerns that we should have as human beings, and political philosophers can have them, but not empirical political scientists. The one caveat I would have in here is that I'm not saying that you should be completely non-normative robots who don't care about normative questions. In fact, I would say that these normative questions should shape which questions you prioritize in terms of the topics that you're trying to understand. So you should be bringing it into the questions of what merits more time, just not in the way that you carry out your empirics. Okay. Second feature is that political science theories are based on causal models. So we call this positivism. And in political science, generally, we seek to understand why questions more than how or what questions. We're trying to look at the causes behind political phenomena. So this is in contrast with something that is descriptive, that's seeking to simply explain in greater detail what happened. And it also contrasts with more interpretive approaches that seek to understand meaning. So an interpretive approach would be looking at what the revolutionaries in France understood to be the nature of revolution. What was the new society that they wanted to construct, trying to delve into that into more detail. So in contrast, a causal model would say, okay, why does social revolution happen sometimes but not happen others? Why did it happen in France in the late 18th century but did not happen in Spain during a similar time period? And so the explanation that we had from the previous lecture from Theda Skocpol is that she develops 2 different explanations for social revolution. One is that there's an international threat to the state, and the second is that you see a breakdown of agrarian class dynamics. So those are answers to her causal question of why we see social revolution. The third feature is that our theories are based on empirical findings, and that means that they're verifiable and falsifiable. So remember, we're starting from an ontological belief that the world is patterned, and that there are similarities across cases. We're also starting from an epistemological belief that the world is knowable, that we can obtain objective evidence, and that our evidence is out there and that we can collect it to understand the world better. So this is based on ideas that our evidence can be verifiable, that this evidence could be checked by a third party, and it's not simply subject to argumentation or our understanding of it, and that it's falsifiable, that we can assess evidence in a neutral way that can confirm or discredit our hypotheses. And the implication here is that it's not simply what you want the answer to be, is that there is evidence out there in the world that might actually confirm a different result than you want to hear. And so it's not simply what you're arguing, but it's based on what the data actually say. The fourth feature is that theories can never be proven. All right, this is a big one, and you will hear me say this over and over again. Theories can't be proven in political science. And the reason why is that we're always subjecting our hypotheses to new evidence. We always have to be open to new evidence that might come in and we can confirm our hypotheses, but we can't prove them. So a common mistake with budding young political scientists is to say that your evidence proves your theory. No. So we never use the word prove, and if you do write that in a political science paper, I will cross it out, because we can argue things, we can test hypotheses, but we're never going to get to the point where things are finally proven. Fifth feature is that our theories are generalizable. So we don't really want to develop a theory that can only apply to one case. We're trying to understand something that is applying to a larger universe of cases, so that you're trying to come up with something that has more broader resonance. So thinking about the example of social revolutions, you don't want a theory that's so narrow that it only explains the Russian Revolution. It's much more powerful to have a theory that can explain lots of different revolutions, or at least maybe revolutions in the 20th century. And then sixth and final feature of political science theories is that we want something that's parsimonious. So what this means is that we prefer simpler explanations. We're trying to have a map, model of politics, nothing that is incredibly complex. So a theory that develops 1,000 different explanations and brings it together might be technically more correct, but it doesn't really actually help us understand politics, as well as a simpler one. So there are some trade-offs that come with this. You might have a general model that you develop that is that is missing some pieces, but if it helps us understand things in a clear way for general trends, that is something that we see as useful. And so going back to Skocpol's example about why revolutions happen, it's particularly compelling because she explains social revolutions as stemming from two causal factors: the international threats to the state and changes in the agrarian class structures. And that helps explain the outcome. So it's not, a million different things, but she's able to develop these broad explanations based on a few parsimonious explanations.